Happy belated birthday, Lewis Hamilton, and welcome to your 40s. And as your present, you get a brand spanking new shiny red Ferrari to drive around at your leisure on a Sunday. But you're also going to have to take on a raging bull in Charles Leclerc in the car opposite you. And when that's not enough, you're still going to have to take on Maximilian Verstappen to get that 8th title. Today, we're going to discuss Lewis in his 40s, and I have a special guest. Hello, Cameron. How the heck are you? You've turned up on my channel, finally.
Imagine. Oh, the humanity, for real, Shez. Listen, it was only a matter of time, a matter of when and not if.
True, but it is still a privilege and an honor, my friend. How
Really
are
so.
you?
I'm all right, Joe.
Wait. It does not matter how you're
Let's
doing.
go. Let's go.
Finally.
Let's go.
It's only taken 2 years to get back at you for that one. So, mate, this week, Lewis Hamilton celebrated his 40th birthday.
Oh,
How does that make you feel?
oh my gosh. In what sense, Shez? Give me some groundings.
Well,
What does
I know
does he
how it
even?
makes me feel. It makes me feel like an old man.
It does make me feel old. It does make me feel old, but it makes me respect him ever so slightly more, right? The fact that he's still operating kind of at the highest level.
Oof, kind of. Always a caveat.
Wow. Do you know what I mean, Shez? Sometimes you gotta there's no absolutes in this weird and wacky world of the one that F's, is there? Not in 2025, Shez. Do you reckon is he still at his peak, Shez?
Well,
Really?
that, Karen, is what I'm going to try and answer.
Let's
But
go.
I've got three heads to my hydra on this one. All right.
Copy.
Right. So I think there's three things that are going to dictate how good Lewis can be, right? The things that are not necessarily within his power, but if he can overcome them, he could still be he could still be great, absolutely top notch past his 40th birthday. And those
Go on.
are, one, we need to tackle his age head on.
Hmm.
And I know how much you love to tell me how many F1 champions were crowned after their 40th birthday. The second is who he's up against. And I don't just mean his teammate, I mean the crop of F1 drivers that he's up against right now.
Yeah.
And the third is the machinery underneath him. Because all of those things, I think those are the three things that either either in his control or not in his control that are going to dictate how good he's going to be. So let's start with age first, because I know you've talked about this a lot. Let's talk prime, right? Is
Go
it
on.
is there any way that Lewis Hamilton can still be in his prime after his 40th birthday? Is that even a thing?
Highly unlikely, Shez. Ultimately, the very simple exam answer to your question, as you've termed it, is that there's no telling, Shez. There's no way of being so definitive. You'll never ever know. There's no you can't unpick at those multitudinous causation threads. There's no way of knowing, chap. I would pitch the question back at you, though, Shez, more pertinently. Does he need to be under the umbrella heading of winning an unprecedented eighth? That's the question, chap. That's the number one priority order question, I think, in my
But
humble opinion.
sure. But that comes back to all of the other things that we've just said, right? Because
Mm,
like I said,
yeah,
this is a multi-headed hydra, and other other drivers and the machinery underneath him aren't completely under his control, right?
agreed.
So as an independent thing, take everything else away, does his age stop him from winning an eighth title? And we can go back to the former champions that you've talked about before, right? Farina in the first ever championship as we know it,
This is correct.
Fangio at the grand old age of 46, 40 bloody 6,
Imagine.
right? And then Brabham at 40. But just ranged against those guys, there are the almost 40s as well, right? There's Nigel Mansell who won it at 39, which was not that long ago, 92. Alain Prost who won it at 38. And Lewis himself, who won it at 35, his title in 2020 was when he was 35 years old. So with those drivers in mind, and sure, we're talking about different eras, but we're also talking about different methods of keeping yourself tip top now
True.
versus what they had back in the 50s. Is age itself, just the number, a barrier?
Oh, but it has to be, Shez. How can it not be, chap? With all of what you've just mentioned, right? Like Brabham, all right, 40 years or older. Brabham was the last one to do it, and that was in 1966. Shez, that may as well be a million years ago. F1 is completely is a different sport, a completely different entity now to what it was back then. Of course, it's got to be a barrier to entry, Shez, especially in the context that you've outlined this bloody automotive pugilistic equation being that he's got to beat Charles Leclerc all roads to the Drivers' Championship in 2025, 6 or 7. Go for a fire breathing dragon in Charles on the opposite side of the garage. Maximilian bloody Verstappen, Lando. That's the problem, Shez. It's not just that's like the age thing is almost like the first hurdle over which he needs to get. And then you have Charles, and then you have, and then you have Lando. It's like, hang on. So I think like that the age in and of itself is a bit of a, you could call it a bit of a misdirection, but in conjunction, and you've got 24 races, and the drivers already, it's a lot to deal with, Shez. I think.
So I've flipped this on its head, I think.
Mm,
And that's based on looking at when other drivers or when drivers on average started their career in a four-wheeled machine of some description, right? And I think my contention now is that the age thing, as far as it relates to other drivers on the grid, is not about what age he is right now. There's tenure to this. There's a little
mm.
bit of
Mileage.
when they got in the car in the first place, right? Because those little neural connections, the things that drivers need to be able to feel the car, develop their style, work out what works, work out what doesn't, and then hone that, starts from such an early age. Do you know how old Max Verstappen was when he jumped in a kart for the first time?
A cart,
A kart, yeah.
mate. Was it two? I want to
Four,
say two and a half.
four,
Bloody Dora.
four, right? Do you know how old?
Unbelievable.
Do you know how old Lewis was when he jumped in a kart for the first time?
6.
8.
Flipping Nora.
Double the age, right? And but this is a trend that's been going on like year on year on year, generation after generation. You go back even further. I've recently had a little read of Gilles Villeneuve's biography, and you know when he jumped in a car of any description,
No, go on,
16,
mate.
right? Just completely different age, right?
So go on then, Shez. What are you saying that there is a burnout to this, or are you saying that experience is an advantage, a durable competitive advantage?
I think he's been able to hone the experience that he's got right now, right? He's been able to like like the racecraft, the tire management, all of those things are still things that he can improve on and work on, right? But the fundamental way that he goes about his driving, and we've talked about his
Mm.
style and how that fits in with the current generation of cars, right? Perhaps the reason that he can't he is having trouble with this generation of cars and adapting to them is because he hasn't had those initial neural connections, hasn't had the time from an even younger age than when he actually started to be able to compete on the adaptability Richter scale with drivers like Max and Charles that were in the car at half his age when
Plus,
they
he doesn't go
started.
in the sim. He's not a big sim Donny either. Even
No,
I'd
you and your
argue that
sim.
would,
All right, tell me
I
about the sim.
mate, I'd argue that would help if it's adaptability that we're talking about. If that's the alter at which he might lose the eighth, then do you know what I mean? Like, Shez, listen to me. You can't tell me that the Shez that the sim won't help in terms of his ability to be able to, in terms of his ability to be able to adapt to this rule and reg set of cars. Surely
But
Even we
even
can argue the extent, Shez,
yes,
but it's definitely an uptick. It would improve him. He'll be in there now anyway. He'll have to. Scuderia, Ferrari, and
yeah,
Milan, and
100%. Because there's
Fiorano.
no
He'll have to be in there.
yeah,
He hasn't got
like,
an option.
exactly. Like there's no way that he can get to know the car with the limited number of
Yeah,
miles that he's
20.
allowed. But what was it 1,000 kilometers over 4 days or something? He's allowed in a TPC.
It's not enough, is it?
Yeah,
It's not enough.
yeah. So
When
he has to do
Michael
it.
used to do, Mike used to do 300,000 back in the day, didn't he?
Right,
Worth of.
unlimited testing, Fiorano as your playground. But even with sim, and by sim, I'm not necessarily talking about the driver in loop sim that they have in Maranello or they had in Brackley before, because he was using that. And certainly towards the latter half of his
Was he
career,
though,
he
Shez?
started. Well, he
Was he?
was though. Like, that's why he was
Well,
sending all those Instagram
toward,
pictures all the time of him.
towards the latter end of 2021, they decided that it was advantage
Yeah,
then, only then.
but that again comes back to when he jumps in the sim, right? If you've grown up with it, again, the neurons fire differently. If you're picking it up at 35, it's not the same experience, is it?
So let me play back to you what you're saying then to me, Shez.
Yeah.
Uh, it sounds like you're saying that you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? That the time for Lewis Hamilton, that he's almost not stuck in his ways necessarily, but he's learned to do one thing brilliantly. His natural talent has put him into a position where he could attend the Met Gala, where he could do all of the shenanigans and promote clothing lines in 2018 and then rock up and experience no performance deficit at Singapore and put in one of the goatiest laps that we've ever seen in qualifying. But now, Shez, when it's fine margins and you're struggling to adapt to the car, all of these things all of a sudden come back to bite you all at once, right, Shez? The fact that you
This is
haven't
it.
put the time into the sim, it's a new era, different car, you're struggling in sector three quali each and every single time. It's like a confluence of things that are coming to undermine the ultimate effort to get the promised eighth, and it's
But
going to be a
yeah,
struggle, Shez.
yeah,
It's going to be.
I think it will. But as I say, it's not. I don't think it's because his age is 40. I think it's because what he had available to him when he was younger, the age in which he got into a car, the age at which he was able to use a sim. Like Lando and Max would have jumped in a high fidelity sim at a much younger age than Lewis even had the opportunity to. Like there are stories of Guido van der Garde, his 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 mate as a youngster,
Mm.
him and Max playing on the PlayStation. But you can imagine that when they were playing on the PlayStation in 2003, 2004, they're going to be playing on a much higher fidelity game, even then, compared to what Lewis grew up with in the
No,
mid
you're right.
90s.
You're right. But I still think this is Shez. This is in conjunction with the age. There's a reason, for Pete's sake, Shez, why there's only been a few 40-year-old champions. Like that, it just and this isn't to take away from the unprecedented nature of the Lewis Hamilton circumstance. I get it. It's absolutely not apples and apples to compare Lewis in 2025 to Alain Prost in 1993. It would be disingenuous
Which
of
was
me
not a
to
good
say that.
title for Alain Prost. Just
Even then. So, but yeah, and still, the underlying still counts. Father Time shares, for the avoidance of doubt, is undefeated, undisputed, pound for pound, has never lost a round. It's a matter of when
when
and not if. I know that Lewis gets it. He keeps himself well and he's a vegan and he goes skiing and he's doing all the training in the off season. But there's an only that you're mitigating it. We are talking about a difference in extents and not kind. Shares father time waits for no man, not even Sir Lewis Hamilton, as brilliant as that dude has been down the years. And so I think it plays a part. We can debate the extent of that part between now and the time that the cows come home, right? But it's going to be tough, Shez. It's going to be difficult because of that 40 years old and the rest on top. But it's just going to, I'd love for him to do it, bro.
right,
I'll be honest with you.
yeah, so
Come.
that's the flip side to it, isn't it? Right? Is that Lewis has kind of dealt with doing the impossible for the longest time,
True.
right? Driving from the back of the grid and winning the race in Brazil in 2021. From a position of right, we've lost this championship to okay, let's go. This can still happen, right?
Mm,
Being in the last what 30 years, the oldest driver to win a race,
mm,
right? Like at 39, he shouldn't be winning races, but he's still
I
doing
agree.
it.
Yeah.
And that's what gives me a little bit of faith that despite the stuff that we've just talked about, the innate goodness that he has in terms of how he goes about his racing, how he works within a team, how he galvanizes them around himself, which he has been doing for the past 12 seasons at Mercedes, really,
Mm.
in the years where he could. Um, well, I know what you're going to talk about in a second, but we will come to the big Jean Lacey shaped elephant in the room. Um, but he has experience of working in those environments, and he knows what he needs to do for himself. And I think part of the reason we're having this conversation is because he hasn't been doing it in the last season, the last
Correct.
half of the 2024 season. But put him in a highly motivated state of mind in a team where he one needs to prove something to them and second needs to prove something to himself. And I would say that there's still beyond reasonable doubt a chance that we see the Lewis of old again.
Mate, I don't know if I could go that far. Like, I would love for that to be the truth, Shez, but I don't think it's the most likely, most probable outcome. I just don't see it, chap. The odds, even with the motivation that you've just outlined,
Mm.
Frederick Vasseur is banking on that. Indeed, they signed him by dint of the motivation that they think he can weaponize to get himself and Ferrari a championship and a drivers and a constructors respectively. But I just think, Shez, it's the totality of the challenge the to get to the mountaintop, the gradient that he's got to overcome. It's not this, Shez. It's this, chap. It's vertical. It really is. It's techie and everything. It's not just the 40-year-old thing. It's the past his prologue. The stats are against him. Only three champions have won at 40 years old or older. Like the bloody Fangio thing. How many drivers have won in three different teams? Fangio only. It's like Alonso couldn't do it. Vettel couldn't do it. Bloody like, do you know
But
what I
they
mean,
were but
Chez?
they were all victims of circumstance, right? In that,
And Lewis Hamilton is not.
well,
This is
that's
Ferrari, Chez.
that's
Let's
what we'll
not
see.
bury our head in the
But
sand,
yeah, but
sir.
this is the first time in what the last 20 or 30 years where the car that the Ferrari is going up against is not going to be designed by Adrian Newey, right? This is this is an opportunity not just for Lewis, for everyone to do
Mm.
something a bit special, right? And if I mean the problem is all of it is ifs, all of it is right, and it's absolutely shrouded in caveats. But if he can hit the ground running, I don't think 2025 is going to be the year anyway. I think this is going to be the bedding in year. If he can, like Alonso, stick it out for 2026 and Ferrari do the business in that season, then I still think there's a chance. But let's talk about the caveat, not the caveat, the elephant in the room, which
Go
is,
on.
and it's not just everybody else outside Ferrari, because ultimately, if you want to win a championship, you've got to beat Max, you've got to beat George now as well
Mm.
in another team, and you're going to need to beat Lando. But first, he's got to beat Mr. CL16 in the car opposite him. And how do you see his
Um,
chances of that?
Mate, I wish we were having this conversation 12 months ago, Shez. Like, badly. I'm not even joking. There are no tongue in cheek or anything. I am worried AF for Sir Lewis because he's going over to that Ferrari team that Charles has built in his own image. That's Charles' team now. Like Frederick Vasseur and whoever else. Nobody can tell me any different. That's Charles' team now, and Lewis Hamilton is going into it and needs to adapt to Charles' circumstance. Scuderia Ferrari in 2025 is the house that modern day Jean Lazy built, Shez. That's what we're talking about here. And I'm worried because he's not even worthy of that moniker anymore. Where have the mistakes of the unforced variety gone, Shez? Exactly the challenge that we talked about early on in the year. They needs to trend those down to zero. They're as near as makes no difference, zero in 2025. And that makes me upset, Shez, because that makes me feel a sense of foreboding around Lewis's chances of beating the Monegasque. If it was last year or the year before, then I would be infinitely more confident than I am now. But it's not. It's January of 2025, and I'm scared because that dude is a fire-breathing dragon of a peddler, fastest point to point by all accounts. And it's going to be, if you don't out qualify him, then don't know.
Yeah,
It's going to
yeah.
be struggles.
So, as with any driver challenge, right? It's a game of two halves. There's Saturday and there's Sunday, right? I guess on balance, we're saying that the likelihood is, given Lewis's performance over 2024 against George, and given Charles' performance over the entirety of his career, but 2024 wasn't a great season for him either. Just let's be clear about that in terms of
True.
on a Saturday. Um, we think that probably Charles is going to have the edge on a Saturday. Yes.
What do you mean? Probably, Chess.
You
Say, how are you, mate?
you
How
think it's
can,
a definite?
like, how? How not? There's going to be after you. There will be. There will need to be material variable change in this reality that you're trying to outline. Where Lewis, at the ripe old age of 40, out qualifies Charles Leclerc faster Gilles Villeneuve settings at the age of 27 at in Ferrari. Like, what are we talking about? Something will have to change, chap. There'll have to be something different. Lewis Hamilton will have to kick on. This will be like the biggest comeback in sports history, let alone like F1 history, for him to outqualify Charles next year. You're having a laugh, Shez. Like, mate, and what's more worrying is this, Shez, for me. Yeah, he can be Mr. Sunday, etc. I get that. But you can't tell me that qualifying's not important
No,
anymore. Yeah,
no.
it's 2025, but you're not going to qualify in 13th when Charles has qualified in second and beat that dude unless there's some sort of like, do you know what I mean? Like force of net, some like some anomalous circumstance that comes into play, like rain or safety cars, something's good. You're going to need luck and fortuitous circumstance, and that's not the most oft occurring circumstance in Formula One, is it? Like you can't get out qualified by Charles every time and think that you're going to beat him in the championship. It doesn't work like that.
So that's where the third part of this comes into it, the car. But I want to come back to that in a second because look, the problem I think that Lewis had last season was not so much that he was being out qualified. It was the scale by which he was being out qualified towards the end of the season. Because up until Monaco, actually the difference between them was less than a tenth of a second over a lap on average. And in that situation, when you're seeing less than a tenth difference, actually the difference in position on the grid isn't as big as it got towards the end of the season. But there was a fundamental change in the way that Mercedes then developed their car. They went for this aeroelastic front wing. And that probably, if you're going to believe Mark Hughes at the race, disproportionately hurt Lewis versus George. George was able to his driving style doesn't depend so much on the pitch and dive of the car under braking. So he was able to drive round it. So if we transplant that to Ferrari, okay, let's say that he does get out qualified over the course of a year head to head. If we're talking about fine margins, right? And it's not like Charles out qualified Carlos Sainz by like seconds. It was
Mm,
hundredths of a second
which is
over the
chaos.
course of the year, right? They were the closest to over the course of the 2024 on the grid. And even the head to head was closer than anybody else
Hmm.
in the top four, right? So if Lewis can get anywhere near that, do we think that on a Sunday he has enough of an advantage or any advantage over current 2025 spec Charles Leclerc to overturn that deficit?
It's a big if, Shez.
Sure.
It is a big F. We're playing hypothetical games and getting hypothetical prizes now. If you can get
That's what
close,
this
of
game
course.
is right now, though, isn't
Yeah,
it?
no, it's true. It's barbershop talk of the F1 for look. I'll say this: if you can get close to Charles, of course he's got the speed on Sunday to hurt Charles. Of course he has. But I'm just saying, as I remember, 24, the root cause of Sir Lewis's downfall so frequently in qualifying, it was mistakes, Shez. It wasn't like, do you know what I mean? It wasn't like he was just getting out
But mistakes
qualified by
born
George.
out of red
I,
hot rear tires, though, right?
but I can't exact. But a mistake isn't like a couple hundredths. A mistake is like 2/10, and two
Hmm.
tenths in 2025, when everybody's converging, the final year of this rule and reg spec is going to be like four or five places, right, Shez? Maybe more. And if you're qualifying with any sort of frequency, four or five places down the road from Shaw, forget about it, Shez. It's not happening, sir. Not this iteration of Charles Leclerc. I can't even call him modern day Journalese anymore.
And
So few
you shouldn't have
mistakes
done
of the
it. You shouldn't have
unforceful
done it
right.
ever.
I mean, I got to call him modern day Gilles Villeneuve. See, what do you mean? I shouldn't have done it ever, Shez. That dude makes so many mistakes. A couple of years ago, that dude was making more mistakes than any. Like he was just in the barrier
You
every
should
single second.
probably watch the 1982 or the 1981 season and just have a look at how many times Gilles Villeneuve spun the car. That's a very
He
Charles
he
Leclerc trait.
he was driving undrivable cars. Shez, very different. Don't do the apples and oranges thing, sir.
Yeah.
That you cannot compare the machinery that Gilles Villeneuve had to work with as versus Charles Leclerc in like 2023. You're having a laugh. You see the way he yeeted it into the barrier, Paul Ricard, or was that 2022? I can't remember.
2022, yeah.
Mate, unbelievable. After he did the hard bit versus Max Verstappen, that was what was so frustrating, knowing all the while that he could be one of the greats and that he's just got this penchant for making mistakes of
I
the
think my
unforced
argument to you
right.
about this has always been that Alesi never even had the pace. Like he was
No,
properly found out
and Lacey didn't have pace. What are you talking about, Shez?
as soon
What
as
are you
he.
saying?
So
He came into F1 as well. Go
just
on.
remember that in 1995, the car that he managed to get one win out of the only win of his Formula One career is the same car that Michael Schumacher turned around at the end of the season when he
You,
tested it and said, "I could have probably won the championship in in
you
this
with your
car."
two decimal place stats. I remember Jean Lazy on his day
On
when he'd
his
had his
day,
Weetabix
when he'd
was
had his
quit by
Weetabix,
yeah, was quit
this is Leclerc
by
every day.
well, yeah, now recency bias any shares. Now that all of
I
a
don't think
sudden
so.
now that all of a sudden he's learned how to be a proper F1 driver and embed some consistency in the way in which he drives the car. Now you want to say that he doesn't make mistakes.
There were so many
Now,
caveats in that, Cameron. You know, and
now,
there were so
now.
many
No,
confounding
yeah, sure.
factors.
Nah, Shez, you can't do this recency bias thing. Just because listen, mistakes were his thing a couple of years ago. Just because he's not making mistakes anymore, you can't go and do your celebratory bloody parade now. Like, there is no revising of history. Shez, once upon a time, Charles Leclerc made multitude of mistakes, unforced errors every single time. And that's where he has to get the journalese moniker from. I don't care what you want to say.
Well, okay, well, I'm going to disagree with you because I still think that the
Yeah,
trend
but
was
that's your
when,
prerogative,
yeah,
sir.
of
You're
course it is.
entitled to.
This is why we talk to each other. Um, But the trend had always been when the car wasn't to his liking, and there was a big chunk of 2023 where it wasn't to his liking. Same in 2022. As soon as the car comes back to him, and part of that is his fault, absolutely.
I
Like
was just,
part of
I'm
it
glad
is
you said.
him having to push the team to do the things that he wants them to do. Fine, take that on the chin. But as soon as he was doing that from the second half of 2023, that's when you've seen this Charles Leclerc. It's not been this season only.
Shez, let me look, Shez. I can't. What is it with F1 these days and these
Hmm.
fast car merchants that need everything to line up perfectly like Tetris in order for them to optimize for their circumstance? What is it about this? You know what, to a certain extent, this is what I hated about Lewis Hamilton. Oh, well, everybody said the car wasn't underneath him last year, and so it's to be expected he's gone on a sabbatical. No. I don't care about that. Just the way that I ingest my sports, the sports athletes that I warm towards now and will always be are those that can steep down and dig it out of themselves, the best out of themselves at the most critical times when their backs against the wall. Shez, this is what we loved about Brazil last year and Max Verstappen's performance. His hands were ice cold before the bloody race. He had a fire-breathing dragon in Lando Norris haranguing him for the championship now, and then he goes and puts in that performance. This is what Lewis used to do back in the day.
Yeah.
Charles Leclerc hasn't done that. He needs to learn how to do it because it's not always going to be roses and fairies. Any championship shares, there's going to be times, right? And again, this is under the umbrella heading of can Charles Leclerc win himself a championship? There's never been. It's been very rare when there's been a championship where somebody's just nailed it and never had troughs, right? There will always be those. How does Charles Leclerc, aka modern day Jean Lazy, fare in those circumstances then, sir?
We need to differentiate between something, right? Because there's a difference between having an underperforming car, right? In general, a car that is the second or third best on the grid, and one that is not suited to your driving style, right? Because Max may have had a car that was not suited, was not competitive towards after the first 7 races of 2024, but it was still a car that he could get a tune out of, which means that there is something inherently about his driving style and that car that meld together. Agree? Right? If he had a Haas, there's still no way he could obliterate his teammate.
But Charles Leclerc didn't have a Haas; he had a
I
Ferrari
understand
underneath
that.
him.
I understand that. I understand that, bro.
Ferrari,
But
Scuderia.
when he hasn't had the fastest car, he's still been able to, in general, outperform his teammate.
Are we talking about
When
Carlos?
Max,
Come on, Shez. Don't do this, chap. We
wait,
can't talk. Look, let me tell you why I get upset when you start talking like this, Shez. I'll be
go on.
honest. We can't talk about Charles Leclerc as one of the fastest drivers who've ever lived, to ever have driven an F1 car, and then start benchmarking him against Carlos Sainz Jr. You see what you're doing here, Shez?
But I'm not. If let me finish, right? Because it's not just about how competitive the car is. It has to meld with your driving style too. Max has had the same problem. When the car was overweight and understeery, he was getting out qualified by Sergio freaking Perez. Not every weekend, but it was closer than it should have been. And that is a fundamental truth of Formula One. Is that not every car is going to meld with every driver? It just doesn't work like that. That's part of the job of the Formula One driver, and that I think is going to be the big problem that Lewis is going to have now. In that you've now got a Charles Leclerc that understands that you do have to have some kind of synergy with your car. It's not just about jumping in anything and making it go fast. That day has gone. That is what Gilles Villeneuve used to do. That's why he was able to get a truck like the 126 CK round Monaco quicker than anybody else. But that's not how Formula One works now. When you're talking about fine margins, you have to make even the third or fourth fastest car on the grid work for you. Otherwise, you're
And
not going
that
anywhere.
and that shares is what I question whether Charles Leclerc has that ability. Like
But I
I
would
just
argue he has shown that he
this
has that.
year.
Yeah,
Potentially, chat. We're gonna have to wait and see. I've
I
got a
agree.
feeling like I've got a feeling, Shez, that history might make a mug at some point next year, this year even. Charles Leclerc will make a huge mistake. I still think he's got it in his locker. Lepers don't change their spots, chap. I understand variable change sometimes, but Charles Leclerc's got a mistake of the unforced variety at critical times still in his locker. Shez, you take that one to the bank. We'll revisit this in a
Well,
couple
sure,
months'
but I
time,
would
you know,
argue
Shez.
that he's not alone in that. And when the car doesn't suit him, Lewis Hamilton's had the same problem.
But what? Yeah, but okay, but we're talking about again. Remember this, Shez. This is where you do the You shift the goalposts as far as Charles Leclerc. When it comes to his praise, you're effusive of it, that he's the greatest, that he's not the greatest necessarily, that's me embellishing, but that he's point to point the quickest on the grid. He's got this Gilles Villeneuve flair and joie de vivre and all this other stuff. But then when you're talking, when it comes to the criticism, you don't leverage the same accountability at him. And that's where I step in as your friend, Shez. I'm going to be equal and consistent across the praise and the criticism of Charles Leclerc. So
Sure.
when if he's struggling and if he's making noddy decisions like he did at Brazil when he went out on Inters and it wasn't even raining yet, when it was Monaco and he came in the pits and the bloody, oh no no no, oh change your mind, when it's all this sort of stuff and he's not managing it in real time like Carlos Sainz does, then I'm going to criticize him,
Sure.
Shez, because all of this is, remember, under the umbrella heading of winning a championship. And that road has to go through mistakes of the unforced variety, mitigating for them, beating Lewis Hamilton, now your teammate, seven-time champion, GOAT settings, beating a fire-breathing dragon, an aggressive fire-breathing dragon in Maximilian Verstappen. And to do all of that stuff, all of the Charles Leclerc from Christmas past, all of that poor Ricard and Imola, poor race management, poor low level decision making, that has to go. Shez, if we're talking about Charles Leclerc under the umbrella heading of champion in 2025.
And I would argue that the mistakes are part of him. Like if the reason that the what you
This,
call
this
wait
is you
wait
again,
wait
Shez, with the
yeah
goalpost.
yeah
You
yeah
see,
but what you call moving the goalposts is not the same thing. If you're getting beaten every week on a Saturday by your teammate, which is what Lewis Hamilton was doing, and then you're making mistakes on top of that, well then the mistakes are a big bloody problem. But when you're actually getting proper pace out of the car. And actually, to be fair, Charles made one proper driving error of note, maybe two. One at Mexico on um, beaten tires and
Baku,
at a track
Abu
where he.
Dhabi qualifying. There were a few, chap. He wasn't error free this year. Like he was
But he
close. He
but
was
it wasn't.
closer.
Yeah, it wasn't like it was. Dumping it in the wall in Miami, kind of.
Well, Baku was kind of free
Even
practice.
that wasn't in qualifying, was it? He got
No,
pole
free
there.
free practice. Well,
Yeah, but
free
he got pole.
practice, which ultimately cost him the race victory,
I don't think it
probably.
did. I still don't think
Well,
it did.
it might have. Difference in extents
Okay,
and
so
not
that's
cars.
conjecture, isn't it?
Well, as are all hypothetical
Well,
games,
a
which
mistake is a
humanly hypothetical.
mistake, right? And if it's a mistake of consequence, then yeah, I would happily
So go
include
on then,
it.
Shez. Let's double kick on this. How do you know definitively then that the mistake, remember street circuit settings, you got to build yourself a race weekend, right? Ergo, every second, whether it's free practice, quali, Q1, Q2, whatever, every second counts because you got to do your due diligence on the tyres and understand what's going on. Towards the end of that race, when he was racing Oscar Piastri, how do you know so definitively, Shez, that incident, that time in Baku that he didn't get didn't cost him the race victory?
Vegas,
The honest answer is that you don't know.
because of
You
Vegas. That
oh,
that's
Shez,
that's that's
behave
that's
yourself.
the, that's the answer. Because
Behave
ultimately,
yourself.
what did Charles Leclerc do in the first stint in Vegas? Absolutely mullered his tires trying to get past George Russell. It's exactly what he did against Oscar Piastri.
As you
I
were
don't
saying,
think
that he
there
would have
was
done it anyway.
correct.
And that proves him to be what? A muggles of an F1 driver. Therein lies. I mean, you've proved my point, but you've
Well,
subverted it in one sense.
correct,
So
correct.
Baku, I'll give you kind of it's pseudoscience, but then he's still doing the same thing that he's always been doing, making the same bloody mistakes of the unforced variety over and over again. Shares Las Vegas a couple of years ago, right? You
A couple
saw
of years ago. Yep.
sim race, turn
Oh,
12,
come
and
on.
then Shez, go on, come on, what?
Because
I
what
see
you
shifting the goalposts, sir. Go on, explain to me.
which bit do you want me to
No, 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 no,
explain?
no. So I'm saying, listen, you're trying to excuse turn 12 on consecutive days as a mistake of the unforced variety. I think
No,
that
no, no,
proves my
it's a
point.
mistake. It's yeah, 100% it's a mistake. But it's not more of a mistake than other drivers made in that race. Or over the entirety of a season. Like how many times, if we're going to talk about this, right? Again, Carlos didn't have quite the pace that Charles did in the same car, but we're not going to talk about the mistakes that he made, dumping it in the wall in China, dumping it in the wall in Singapore.
See,
Like if we're
but
talking about, and I know you because every driver you have to compare them with what their peers are
no,
doing. You cannot say that
no
he is more
peers, shares, define Carlos Sainz. Look,
Mm.
based on the definition, the credit that we've been giving to Charles over the past 20 minutes, like Gilles Villeneuve settings, that you can't put Charles and Carlos in the same sentence, really. You cannot, Shez. Like, they're not. So why are we comparing him even to Carlos? Like, this is my principal point of contention when it comes to Charles, Shez, that over the course of all right, sack off this season, right? Charles been brilliant.
He has.
Before this season, though, Carlos was within a pothole in Las Vegas of being 2-1 up over the course of the three championships. That shouldn't happen, Shez. If indeed Charles Leclerc is who we think he is, and I think he can be one day, maybe when he's had his Weetabix, it shouldn't be. So my noddy B spec F1 mind is trying to understand the wheres and the hows and the whys. Why can Carlos Sainz get so close over the course of three championship to Charles Leclerc if indeed Charles Leclerc is that much quicker than him? That's what I'm trying to
Well,
understand. And
as we've said on this channel and others, science is not a slouch. But taking that aside, the pothole in 2023 is an oversimplification
wow,
of
wow.
of why they ended up in the championship positions that they did. If you're going to
It-
forget the three DNFs and one DNS that Leclerc had last season, then fair enough. But put that to one side for a second. I don't think the only person ultimately, I think this is where you're getting at. The only person that you really need to compare Charles with in terms of if he's going to win a title or not is not Lewis, it's not Carlos, it's not George, because all of those guys do make mistakes. Lando Norris, again, the same. And you know how I feel about him. The only person is Max. So that is sure, that is the question. That is the challenge that everybody on the grid is facing. And I would argue that 2024 spec Charles Leclerc came the closest that he has ever been. Not saying it's the closest that he can ever come, but the closest that he has been so far to being the driver that can take it to Max, and probably the closest anyone else is on the grid, which is why so many in the F1 world, us included, placed him as the second best driver in F1 in 2024. You did not, I remember.
I think it's second by some way. Some say that close
Sure.
but no cigar, mate. I don't think he's there, chap. He's the honest truth. Well, all right. So in 2024, put him in the equal machinery to Max, and he just doesn't get. He's not. I think you're taking the piddle in even putting the two of them in the same sentence, chap. Max and Charles now, like this current iteration of both. Not even close,
I
Shez.
think it
How
would be
very
very
dare you?
interesting.
No, how very
I think
dare
it
you?
would be
Not
very,
to
very
say that Shaw
interesting.
can't race, like he's the best at. I agree with you when you put forth this supposition that he's the best at racing wheel to wheel. Max Verstappen, of course, he is. Is he the one that can take it to Max over the course of a 24 race season? I think we've seen that all bloody ready in 2022. He burnt out after a couple of races and started yeeting it into the barrier at Paul Ricard and Imola. Mate, no chance. Not on your Nelly. Not this current iteration. Although he's been better, Shares.
He has.
Not this current iteration. But you see, Max Shares, Brazil Max, bloody
Yeah,
like Imola Max.
yeah. That
Behave
Max,
yourself.
the one that look. I'm not saying Charles Leclerc will beat Max Verstappen. I have the contention I have with you is that you think it's a completely foregone conclusion. Like there is no chance at all that Leclerc could even come
He would
close.
need. He would need if we're going into max territory now. Like the others on the grid, he will need stuff, Shez. He
Hmm.
will need fortuitous
And
circumstance. He will need a car that's probably quicker than anything else on the grid. He will need his team to have had their Weetabix every single race weekend. He will need to be focused and dialed in the best that he's ever been every single bloody race weekend, and then we can have a conversation.
but
But I
that is
don't
the
think
level. That's just the level that any Formula One driver needs to get to.
and I
Um,
don't think Charlie's there yet, chap. Not
that
now.
that for me is a wait and see. But lest this turns into a Charles Leclerc chat fully, the final thing on my agenda was, and this will be the last thing I think, because we're going to run out of time.
Mm.
Um, the car.
Go on.
Is this, from a Lewis point of view, is the reason that he is struggling a problem with this generation of cars as a whole, and therefore it doesn't matter what Ferrari do, he's screwed anyway? Or is it that being at Ferrari in a car that is more competitive than what the Mercedes was, perhaps more suited to what Lewis needs, do we see something different from him in 2025?
Um, Shez, by the way, do you remember when you put Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc in the same sentence, and that level of that unprecedented level of blasphemy? How outrageous! Outrageous, Shez. Sorry, to your question, because I digress. Is it just the car as far as Lewis is concerned?
As in, is it this generation of
Mercedes.
cars, or is it a specific Mercedes issue?
It's hard to know, isn't it,
Isn't it?
Shez?
Yeah, I agree.
It is tough. We'll see soon. I hope desperately as a as a closeted Sir Lewis Hamilton fan that he can that it's not this generation of car. I think he'll be better. You know, I think he'll be better. Trap. I think he'll be better next year. New circle. Sometimes you just need to touch grass right. You need to be somewhere else, eat some pasta, get some sun on your back. Sometimes you just need a change of scenery. And I think that relationship between Sir Lewis and the boys of girls from Brackley and Brixworth had become a bit toxic. Sometimes you just got to cut it away. You can hear Lewis talking about, I'm slow now. Really? We know you
Mm.
don't believe that for a second. I don't know whether you're using it as a motivational tool or what, or trying to point the lens or the scopes at your team. I don't know what was going on there, but something was happening. And I think Lewis will be better even if he's experiencing problems with the car. We know about his style and that he's hard on the brakes and he asks a lot, and that doesn't suit the ground effect and all that. I get it, and he wears on the tires, particularly on the exit. I understand it, but I think I say all that to say this, Shez, he'll be better next year, if not just for the change in circumstance and unveiling himself of the toxic relationship that the Mercedes partnership had become. I don't know if that answers your question, mate.
Well,
I'm still trying to get over I'm still trying to get over the fact that you put Max and Charles in the same sentence. Shez, what have we done?
I mean, to be fair, we've been putting them in the same sentence since karting.
True. Also,
So yeah, I don't think it's an unfair comparison. But we'll see though. This is the beauty of 2025, right? There's just so many variables at play. Like we still have no idea which way the competitive order is going to
what
pan
what
out.
what do you think, bro? What do you think about this Lewis Hamilton circumstance in the car? Do you think he'll jump all of a sudden? Go on, let me pitch the question that you thus.
Hmm.
Do you think he'll jump in that Scuderia Ferrari and all of a sudden remember who he was in
Not
2018
in
or
25.
2014?
Not in 25. I just think there's too much for him to unlearn and relearn. That it's going to suddenly click for him. Race one, Melbourne, especially with the way that he has already lost a bit of time in terms of not being able to do the Abu Dhabi test. He's got a truncated amount of time that he can run in previous cars before Bahrain testing starts. He's only got so much time in the sim. Yeah, look, he'll get on top of the steering wheel the settings, but
Mm.
number one, there's a language barrier. He's as far as we understand it, he's not fully learnt Italian. That in and
Learning
of
though.
itself is going to be an issue. Um,
Is it going to be an issue though, Shez? I've heard that that's
well,
ball
yeah,
feathers.
in terms of they do all their debriefs and stuff in English, yes, I agree with you. I think, and they're all multinational companies at the end of the day now, so it won't be the biggest barrier, but there is a culture difference between where he was working
Brilliant.
um, at the end of 2024 and where he's going to be working now. That's undeniable. All of these things are obstacles that he's going to have to get past, and are going to be uh, things that put him at a disadvantage, especially early in the season. I don't think 2025 is necessarily the season to measure him up against. It's going to be
How, bruv? It has to be, chap. He's only got.
Well,
Look, I tell you what. I tell you why time is of the essence. Nothing to do with the 40-year-old thing. But I mean, if you're looking for a number one in the team, then
yeah, and that's
by
yeah,
all
and that's
accounts, whoever's first past the post cumulatively in the driver's standings by Monaco,
Monaco, right? Yeah,
then he's it.
yeah. I my heart wants to say yes because I'm like you. I want to see an eighth out of the guy. I like
Can you imagine,
I
Shez?
absolutely want it.
I tell you
Yeah,
what.
in
Imagine he
terms
jumps in
of
the car and drops it on pole 2 tenths down the road from Charles Leclerc in Australia.
yeah, but if he keeps doing that, then yeah,
Oh my
let's have a
gosh.
conversation. But
Oh,
we are dealing with we're not dealing with with desires of the heart here. Like
I agree.
this is about cold hard reality and where we think it's all going to end up. This is and this is this is the thing that it's really difficult to speak to people online about when you're that sort of ensconced within what you want and what you think your driver is capable of. The reality is not always going to be that rosy, however much you want to manifest it, right? And that's where it's difficult for me because I know what I want. Absolutely, I want him to win an eighth title. I want it to be in 2025. Like I want him to turn up at Maranello and come out of it as, you know, inarguably the greatest driver that has ever driven a Formula One car ever. That's obviously what I want to see. Can I see that happening in 2025?
No chance, mate.
There would need to be a strange set of circumstances that are outside of his control to make that happen. And he can,
Milagros, milagros, miracles, is what is the word that you're looking for here. And you know what the joke is? As you said that, Shez, I'm thinking to myself, I'd love for Lewis to win, like you. I'd love to Lewis to win an unprecedented eight. But you know, I think I'd love more a do-over of 2021, chap. I want to see both of those buds. In fact, throw Charles and Lando in there. I want to see the cream of the crop, the best peddlers drive against the best in the best machinery every single race weekend. Shez, I would lose my mind. I would just inject that into my veins now. I want to see a do-over proper of Sir Lewis with having had his Weetabix and Max now bloody 27 years old, soon to become a father, having had his Weetabix in a car that he knows and loves and can trust, and in a team that's got some semblance of harmony and stability. That would be blockbuster. Liberty Media would have to immediately sell F1 as an entity because it'd be too many billions. The offers would be too good for them to turn down. But I digress. Yes, I
well,
apologize.
do you digress? I don't think you do because I think if 2025 delivers that, then we can all walk away happy. And on that note, I think
Wow.
we should probably call it. Cameron, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on this side of the fence. Um, enjoy the rest of the off season. I'll be eyes glued to your channel as always. Um, and as always, thanks everyone else for watching. Please like, subscribe. You know where to find Cameron. Cameron CC YouTube. Be there. You know you need to. Like, subscribe us. Please leave us a comment. We'll read every single one. We'll reply to as many as we possibly can, and we will see you guys in the next one.